The first part. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the dark conscious. Carl Jung. Today. I woke up late again today and rushed to eat breakfast in the car. I drove too fast again today, praying to get that last parking spot. School dragged on again today. Same classes, same people, same mindless curriculum, same teenage bullshit. I got home early from school today and bummed a ride to the beach. But the beach was closed today. Someone decided to park their boat neatly on the reef, and it hemorrhaged oil and gas, leaching its toxicity into the world. My mom was gone again today when I finally got back home. I took a shower for a long time today, letting the warm building blocks of life cascade off my body and tumble down the drain. Standing naked in my darkened room, dripping wet from a sadness I couldn't explain, I put the cold barrel of a gun in my mouth today. But I didn't pull the trigger. Not yet. Not today. Life isn't always easy. Regardless of what language or culture we're born into, we all emerge into a world foreign to us. When we're little, most likely the only tools we're given to navigate life, for better or for worse, are the ones our parents give us, if we're lucky. Most likely the tools they give us are the ones they were given by their parents, and our grandparents got their tools from their parents, and so on and so on. Growing up, navigating adolescence, going through puberty, traversing social scenes, performing in school, figuring out who we are, entering and navigating adult life can get really overwhelming. I wrote the poem on the previous page in writing seminar during my senior year of high school. I was 18 at the time and bound for college, working 3 or 4 nights a week, doing well in school, looking forward to being out on my own in just under a year's time, and I didn't think I was depressed or distressed about anything particular. Probably, definitely, some teenage angst, but at some point that fall, the thought popped into my head. What if I wasn't here anymore? What if I committed suicide? The thought confused me and it frightened me. Where did that come from? Why would I even think that? However, instead of pushing it down or ignoring it and hoping it would go away, or running away from it or letting it fester, I turned to face it. It was almost a challenge to myself, and I pitted the voice in my head against, me. Okay, you're the one who had this thought, so let's go there, tough guy. Take it all the way. Put yourself in that situation. Put yourself in that mentality. What would it feel like to be in that place? And what would it feel like to take that action? Now think about someone besides yourself. If you decide to leave this life, you destroy others' lives besides your own. See your mom, your sister, your dad after you do it, your friends. Imagine what it will feel like for them after you're gone. And I did. I let myself go there in my mind. I followed it all the way past the hypothetical action to the impact that action would have on those that remained. I let myself feel the anguish, hurt, anger, sadness, frustration, hopelessness, loneliness, desperation, confusion, and pain that must come with thoughts of taking your own life, and that those left behind must feel as well. I let myself feel all of these things, and as I did, I confirmed this was absolutely not the path for me. Then I let all those feelings go, as well as the original thought that had popped into my head. I released every bit of that thought experience, and I made sure that nothing was left behind. This was the first time I can remember giving myself the space to sit with a challenging thought and follow the trail of that thought further than I had ever been willing to go before. It was challenging and emotional and scary, but the moment after I let everything around the experience go, my internal perspective shifted. It felt like it had expanded ever so subtly, and I had a little more internal space than just a few minutes prior. I had no way of knowing it at the time, but this was the beginning of what would become my journey to meet my guy on the 9th floor. So that's just the first part of my book. There's a lot more in there as far as tools we can use to release energy from our system that creates so much of the symptoms and chronic illnesses and dis-ease that we experience in life. But I wanted to talk today about thoughts that are challenging and how we can make the dark conscious in order to release a lot of our demons, a lot of the things we experience in life that we really don't want. So the first thing I want to do is normalize things a little bit and tell you that if you've thought about taking your own life, or self-transitioning from this human experience, you're not alone. I think these thoughts are more common than we want to admit to ourselves, and I'd say the majority of us have had some type of thought in that area at some point in our lives. What if I wasn't here anymore? Something important to understand is that we are not our thoughts, emotions, or reactions. The thoughts, emotions, and reactions we experience are largely programmed at the subconscious level, and we've been running some variation of them since we were little. Usually by the age of 7, everything is programmed at the subconscious level. That said, even though we aren't our thoughts, feelings, and emotions, we still experience them on the inside. And because we experience them internally, we tend to take ownership of them. We think, oh, this must be mine. So the opportunity and the challenge here is to realize that about 80 to 85% of our daily thoughts will be negative, trend towards protection and safety. And about 95% of them are going to be looping or repetitive in some way. It's a variation of something we've thought, had a reaction to, or had an emotional response to previously. So in my experience, gaining this perspective of my internal space was really monumental. It was the first crack in a door opening that I didn't even realize I was about to move through on my own personal journey. And by releasing the feeling around that thought and moving through that experience, I was able to put out the brush fire and really remove a lot of the fuel that these negative looping thoughts tend to have. So the more that we can positively disrupt our system, come back to balance in the present moment, the more perspective and ability that we gain to get better control of our thoughts, emotions, and reactions, to get better perspective of our internal state, and to help see things a little bit more potentially clearly, or maybe a little bit more balanced perspective, let's say. So how do we do this? How do we get back to balance after we've had a really traumatic experience, or if we've come to the brink of taking a more permanent action? First is recognition and awareness. So we have to become aware and recognize that we are not these things that we're experiencing them. We're here to experience them because we're in the body that has accumulated this information and this programming. But our opportunity is to move through it or move past it when it's a thought. So the sooner that we gain recognition of a thought we're having, instead of just being steamrolled by it, the sooner we can disrupt the pattern, the sooner we can extinguish the fire, the little brush fire, and the more efficiently we can come back to a balanced, centered state where we can actually have maybe a more accurate perspective or perception of what we're currently going through. The challenge is that we tend to just accumulate stuff it down, don't address it, don't deal with it, and then slam the lid and ignore it. And that's when things start to express, and that's when we get symptomatic, and that's when we maybe start having darker thoughts, or we start to feel things physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally that aren't from a place of love, aren't from a place of unconditional acceptance. And that's really where I've found that we can operate very successfully from. So the first step is disrupting the pattern, disrupting the thought, disrupting the behavior. Second part is coming back to a balanced state. And there's a link here for how to do that in under 10 minutes. So if you're in a heightened state, if you're not feeling that great, try this practice. It's 10 minutes of your day, and you're going to bring yourself back to being grounded in your body, in your system, and hopefully getting a little bit more clarity, a little bit more space internally. So if you are feeling alone, if you are feeling abandoned, if you're feeling like nobody understands you, like nobody can ever understand what experience you're going through, you're largely right. You're correct. We have hyper personal human lives. And while there can be overlap and there can be shared experiences, nobody really knows what's going on within us except us. That said, we do tend to have similar experiences of different intensities. And this is where I want to get into the concept or the idea of rock bottom. Rock bottom comes in many forms, many shapes and sizes, and there's no comparison or judgment on any of this because, again, it's hyper personal for us. So one person's B on a math test could be rock bottom. Another person, it might take years of ignoring things and not dealing with things and having physical issues before we finally say enough is enough and I'm going to enact change within my life. So rock bottom is completely subjective. It's completely hyper personal to each and every one of us. And it can be a really powerful place in a positive way. Because if we're in free fall, if we don't feel like we have any support or any foundation, it's really hard to make any kind of change. We're really hunkered down in fight, flight, freeze, and we're hanging on for survival. Once we get to a place of either acceptance or admittance, like I have nowhere else to go, I have nothing left, that can be a crossroads that springboards or launches us back to our wholeness on a journey back to understanding who and what and how we really are. And again, this is a journey that's hyper personal for all of us. Nobody else can tell you what that is. It's something for us to experience on our own. So rock bottom, I've been there a number of times in my life. When I was 18 and I was thinking about, I had this thought of suicide, that would have been a rock bottom moment. I have been part of startups that have failed. There was a few points in our marriage where I would consider it rock bottom. I just felt like there's no positive way forward. And each time, because I had that thought of there's no possible way forward, but then I countered it with, wait, there's always a way forward. There's always a choice. There's always a way to look at things as, yes, this is really bad, but what positive can I take out of this? What can I utilize from this experience to grow and expand within myself, within life? So a lot of times we will not enact change until the discomfort of the way it is or has been outweighs the discomfort of or fear of changing. It's interesting that a lot of times we take it to this point before shifting. We don't have to, but it seems to be the trend, at least in my experience. So rock bottom can be a beautifully expansive place to be. It can be one of the most important places for us to ever get to because we're at a crossroads. We come to a choice like, hey, are we going to keep doing this thing? Or are we ready to let whatever fuel is driving this thing go and choose a different thought, choose a different experience, disrupt the system, come back to balance, get a different perspective or perception of things. So rock bottom can be one of the most inspirational places we can ever get to. So if you're at a low point, recognize that you're in the middle of a climb. It's a challenging experience right now. There's a lot of, if you're thinking about it from a rock climbing standpoint, like we're looking at our handholds, we're using a lot of energy on this climb. If you're in that place, do recognize that there is a plateau ahead. There's always going to be a plateau. Climbs and plateaus is one way we can look at life. So if you're in it right now, if you're in the muck, recognize that there is a plateau coming. And again, it's going to look different for each and every one of us because our experiences are hyper personal. So what does this all have to do with enlightenment or expansion of awareness? Well, just like Carl Jung says, we're not going to get anywhere just dancing in the space of no bad days or good vibes only. It's a nice place to be, but there's the messiness of life where it's not really something that a lot of us feel is accessible all the time. So instead of striving towards, oh, I only have to think positive, oh, keep in the positive, that can be as exhausting as feeling low or depressive or anxious or like nobody gets us or like nobody understands or like nobody has felt what we've felt, which is a lot of times how we express or experience things. So if there are these dark corners of our psyche, of our mental space, of our lives, those are the areas that if we hold the mirror up and we move through, and we can do this with helpers. We can call in an assist from a facilitator. Both Kelly and I practice subconscious transformation and emotional trauma release. So look for a practitioner. It's something we can do on our own with the knowledge and the tools. Then we can move to a place of, well, what do we do with it? And that's where the expansion comes in. So it's hard to get to a place of expansion unless we've got momentum. So we can utilize rock bottom as a springboard to launch us to what we want to experience in life by making the choice that we're cutting off that fuel line of the negative. We're cutting off the fuel line of the trauma we've experienced. We're cutting off the fuel line of the negative beliefs that maybe we got from a parent or a guardian about ourselves or others. That's not reality. Those are the constructs that have been handed down. That's other people's reality that we've adopted because we haven't known any other way. So I'm here to tell you today that there is another way. This is an amazingly powerful bio-machine, biochemical, bioelectric system. And we've just been redlining, white-knuckling it, dealing with the symptoms that we experience. The challenge is the symptoms are almost the last thing that we experience. There's a whole trail that leads up to becoming symptomatic, whether it's in thought, feeling, emotion, or something physical. And there are opportunities for disruption all along the way, but because we're not trained to recognize the expressions of our system, and we just get blindsided by feelings or emotions or thoughts all the time, we've never been handed a guidebook on how to use these bodies more successfully instead of being in states of dis-ease and uncomfortableness and pain and sadness and disconnection, as so many of us are. So if you're feeling in a place that's low, if you're feeling in a place that feels untenable, like you can't, it's one, unacceptable, I can't be here anymore, recognize that you've always got a choice to let everything go that has brought you to that point. You don't have to carry that weight anymore. And there are tools and techniques and methods and approaches that are really accessible that we can use to get ourselves out of that place. Also, if you are at a place that you feel like there's nothing left and you've hit rock bottom, understand that that can be a springboard that launches us exactly where we want to go on the trajectory that is fulfilling, that feels more whole and complete. It feels like it's starting to become a piece of us that we felt like has been missing, that we're starting to get back. So rock bottom can be that launching board. And then all of this just comes back to more knowledge of self, more awareness of how I am being, of more awareness of the I, and then even who is behind the I, who is behind the me. What are those? What is that space? So there's always an opportunity. And the more that we can align with love for ourselves and for others, sometimes the love for ourselves can be the most challenging one. The more that we can disrupt the physiological reactions, the negative thoughts, recognize that at our core, we are love. And then we can start taking one step at a time towards moving towards what we do want, instead of being so hyper-focused on what we don't want or what is really negative that we are experiencing. We can make those shifts. It's a practice and it's a process. A lot of it is fairly simple, but I'm not going to say it's easy. But if you are at that place of desire for different and don't quite know how to get there and don't see how to change things, there's always a way. And with the work that Kelly and I have done over the years, we've got a lot of tools that we can share with you that you can utilize on your own, that we can work with together, that can really positively disrupt these amazingly powerful systems, get our hands back on the wheel of the car, so to speak, and clear out a lot of that emotional and energetic junk in our subconscious trunk so that we can live a more fulfilled, a more peaceful, a more present, a more abundant life from the inside out. And that's really the key. The change begins within. And the more we transform what we're perceiving as negative within, the more our outer world reacts to that change. So we really live inside out, even though we perceive life as being experienced outside in. So the more that we tend to that garden on the inside, the more that we pick the weeds and we till the soil and we create a positive environment inside, the more positive environment we will experience on the outside. Just take some practice, some patience, awareness, and openness to experiencing something different, something better. So if there are any questions, please reach out. We're happy to share as much information as we have, and many tools and processes and practices as we've got that can help you on your own journey. If you are in crisis, please do reach out to someone, anyone. You're not alone. This is much more common than you might feel it is. And there's always a different way. There's always an opportunity to shift towards what you do want instead of trying so hard to escape what we might currently be experiencing that we don't want. Love to you, all my love to you on your journey. Have a beautiful day. Much love.